Hello, my friends. I'm going to show you how to repair relationships with family, with spouses, with friends, with business partners, whomever you might have a rift with, without even having to talk to them. Sound incredible? It really is, my friends. It's really incredible. This works like magic. I'm going to give you an example in my own family of how I actually did this and how it works. I've had occasion to use this on 3 different family members, and it's worked every time like magic. So stay tuned, my friends. Yes, no talking it out, no having to work it out, no counseling, no years of therapy, rehashing old hurts, reopening those old wounds over and over and over. None of that. That's the old model. And it doesn't work. Many of you, I'm sure, can relate to that. All of that is a waste of energy, and it's a waste of life. Because you can't convince the other person that you're right and they're wrong, and they're not going to convince you, especially when there's hurt feelings there already. I'm sure you can all relate there, right? We've all been down that road before. This is what the beauty of this. This is why it's so amazing, my friends. I can't emphasize more how much it is. So how do you do it? I'm going to get to that in just a minute. But let me tell you this. The first thing I want to say is that people are always reflecting back to you some part of you that you may not even be aware of. I think you all know that you can't change anybody but yourself. Again, that's the beauty of this, is that you don't have to change anybody but yourself. You don't have to talk to them about it. You don't even have to talk to them about it. How cool is that? How amazing is that? So it's kind of like looking in a mirror, right? You can try this if you want. Go look in a mirror and figure out, how do I change that reflection? I think it's pretty simple. Everybody knows how to change the reflection in the mirror. You have to change how you're standing, how you look, whatever the situation is. Well, guess what? This is how the universe works. The universe is like a giant feedback loop. You've heard what goes around comes around. Well, that's a true saying. What you put out comes back to you. I have found that to be true in my life, and I'm sure most of you can see that that's probably true in your life, at least in some cases, if you paid attention at all. Okay, well, back to how we do it. So the first thing you got to do is be the person that you want the other person to be. That's how you change you. And the second part of that same thing is to see the other person in their best potential light. Okay? So how do you do that? There's a couple things that you can do. And I'll get into this a little bit more when I give you the example of how it worked for a family member and me who had a terrible rift. However, the way that you see and perceive people, it has an influence on them. I recall once reading a near-death experience, which is really more of a died and came back experience, but the common name now is near death. Anyways, this person saw how your thoughts and beliefs about other people kind of attached to them like a weight and weighed on them. So if you ever wonder why somebody always acts the way you expect them to act towards you, you actually have a part in that. Some of you have probably felt that from other people, how they're thinking about you. Sometimes we do that to ourselves. We think somebody's thinking something about us and they're really not. But they may be subconsciously, and they're not doing it consciously, have some thoughts about you. Oh, he always does this or she always does that, type of thing. We all do that to other people all the time. So we're judging them based on their past, which speaks to another scripture, judge not. So people in our lives are always reflecting back to us some part of us. Okay, this is an important point to understand. Now you can go and look in a mirror and see if you can change your reflection. Try it. You can't. You can paint the mirror, you can crack the mirror. Your reflection is not going to change until you change how you look to change the reflection in the mirror. So this is how life works. The universe is a giant feedback loop, and it's feeding back to you everything that you put into it. It's like a giant mirror, so to speak. Also, seeing people in their best light speaks to another scripture that all things work for good. And so I try to use that in my life as a means of looking for the good in all things. So how do you do it? Let's get down to the nuts and bolts, so to speak. The way you do it, well, let me give you an example in my own family. I had a family member who wouldn't speak to me, and had been a couple of years. Well, not quite a couple years. However, I could be face to face with this person and they wouldn't even say a word to me. But a bunch of time passed and we hadn't seen each other for almost 2 years, and there was no communication whatsoever over this rift between us. So, and I knew that we were going to have to get together and see each other a lot more often at some point because of other family things and family members and so on. So I decided that I was going to heal this rift. I knew about this technique, but I had never really tried it out. So I decided that this was going to be a really good opportunity for me to try this out. So the first thing I did is I started listing the good traits about this person. Okay? And most people have some good traits. No matter how angry you are at them or what you think they did to you, usually most people have some good traits, and so you can find some of those things. And this person happened to be a very compassionate person in helping other people, had helped many elderly in the family and dropped everything to do it, and that sort of thing. So they were a good person. So what I did is I wrote down 3 or 4 things about them like that, and anytime I would think a negative thought about them, I would go to my list of their good traits and think about that instead, redirect my thoughts, so to speak. The other thing that I had to do was let go of the blame. It didn't really matter who was to blame because we've all been down that road before and no good thing ever comes from it. I'm sure that you can relate to that whole situation in some relationship in your family or in your life at least. Back to making a list of their good traits, this actually really had a surprising effect on me. I began to see this person in a different light. At first it seemed like it was going through the motions, I suppose, but I would redirect my thoughts anytime, and I began to feel better about this person because I was focusing on their good traits instead of their negative traits. We as a society and a culture, we tend to focus on the negative in everything. It's our cultural norm, and it's too bad because it has created the society that we have. You know, there's a lot of good things about society, but there's also a lot of negative out there because of this. So, and that's one way to do your part in changing it, by trying to see the good in all things and in all people. Yeah, I know. So it's really hard to see the good in all things when you're up to your neck in alligators in the swamp, so to speak. I said that to somebody one time and they said, well, you're still alive. You have an opportunity to maybe escape. And I said, now that's the spirit of looking for the good in all things. I think you get the point. The other effect that this had on me was that my animosity towards this person dissipated. How cool is that? Because I was focusing on their positive and good side of things and not on the negative. I did this for several months and nothing. I don't know what I was expecting, maybe a phone call out of the blue or something. But then one day it happened. We had an occasion to be in each other's company. And I walked in the door, and the person came up to me, gave me a hug, and asked me how I was doing. How cool is that? That was the quintessential this stuff works moment for me, because I had focused on all their good points. I had saw them in their best light. I had changed me and how I felt about them, and they reflected the change right back to me. Wow. Wow, my friends. I thought, gee, I have a couple more people in my family that I need to do this with. We didn't have as great a rift as this one, but there was, I don't want to say animosity, but there was I'm trying to find the right word. There was an air between us and we easily were irritated with each other, even though we weren't not speaking at all. I realized they were showing me something within me that I needed to address. And here's the thing, like I said, some people say, oh, no way, there's no way I have that in me. That person is just a jerk or whatever. But really, you probably don't on a conscious level do that, and you control it on a conscious level. But subconsciously, there's a part of you, and it may be so ugly that you buried it and thought that you dealt with it and you didn't, and that brings it up. That's, we call those triggers sometimes too. And if you don't agree with that, that's fine. You can contemplate it, take it for what it's worth. It was a hard pill for me to swallow too, so I understand. Those people, they're irritating you and bringing those irritants to the surface for you to address. If you look at it that way, that's another way of trying to see the good in all things. So instead of seeing that person as just an irritant and a pain in the rear, it's like, oh, I thought I dealt with that. I have something to address here. Maybe this seems oversimplified to you, but it's not. It's really that simple. I say simple, but it doesn't mean it's necessarily always easy. And I'm human. I'm not perfect, but I have done this on 3 different occasions, like I have said. And it really works, my friends. It really, really works. It was like magic, my friends. It was as if nothing had ever happened. How cool is that? Seriously, it's really that simple. It really is. That doesn't necessarily mean it's easy. For those couple of months where I was focusing on the good on that person, sometimes it was difficult. But that's all in our own minds. Persistence really made the difference. And always seeing their good points showed them to me in a better light. That's something that the scriptures and most of the esoteric and scriptural writings of most cultures teach, if you're into that sort of thing. It never came up again in conversation, and it's been a few years now since I did that. Is that awesome or what? This really works. If you're willing to give it a try, and don't take my word for it, give it a try, this can change your life. When I realized this, I realized that all that we have been taught to believe in our culture about how you work things out with people was wrong. Well, I shouldn't say it's wrong, but it doesn't work very well usually. Sometimes you can work things out with people, but there's always some underlying animosity there usually, and it eventually blows up again. In most cases, I'm not saying that in every case. It takes a big person to let go of hurts and pains. But this, you don't even have to talk to them. You don't have to work it out. That's what's so amazing about it. You have to let go of all the hurt feelings and playing the blame game and all that sort of thing, as I've said before. And on another note, on that note, science has done studies and shown that all those negative feelings and emotions release a chemical cocktail of hormones and things in your body that aren't good for the body. And it can cause disease if indulged in over time. I happen to think that this is the initial cause of all disease. Now, that doesn't mean that there's not some environmental factors involved, but I believe that this sort of thing sets the stage for those environmental problems to take over the body. Why does one guy drink and smoke all his life, and doesn't worry about what he eats, and he lives to be, 90 or 100 years old, and the other guy that, works out, eats right, does all the right things, and gets cancer? So there's something more going on there than just the environmental factors. I'm not saying they're not a factor, and and they're an important one too. Another thing that leads to rifts is triggers. You've heard that probably before. Triggers are a programmed response. And we got most of these triggers when we were kids, under the age of 7. Science has shown that kids under the age of 7, their brain waves are in the theta state. And the theta state is the meditative state for most types of meditation. And it's also the dream state when you're sleeping. So that's why these kids they're like an open sponge absorbing everything. But those things get committed to memory, and they become a response even into adulthood. So oftentimes you're responding as a 5-year-old to an adult situation. So think about that. The way to change it is just like we said here, to change yourself. Look within yourself. So there it is, my friends. That's the simple way. And let me recap real quick here. So you have to change you. You have to see the other person in a good light. Make a list of their good traits. Whenever you have a negative thought about them, go to your list and memorize that list. Okay, so you don't have to have it in your pocket or something. And you only need to list 3 or 4 good traits about that person to remind yourself that they're a good person. It's that simple. Do that, persist at it, however long it takes. It took a couple months for me. It might take longer, it might happen quicker. How did I discover this stuff? Well, I got this from Neville Goddard, from reading his books, listening to his talks and lectures on YouTube. And there's a few others that teach this sort of thing too. Florence Scovel Shinn and Dr. Joseph Murphy. I would encourage you to look them up, dig into their writings and their videos and so on. And you'll learn a lot there. Also, I would suggest taking a look at Dr. Joe Dispenza. Dr. Joe, as we call him, talks a lot about this, and he also talks about the science of how the negative emotions and feelings release the chemical cocktail that's harmful to the body. And again, don't take my word for it. Try it. Try it out. All right, my friends. You have a good rest of your day, evening, morning, wherever you're at. And let's be the change we want to see. Let us be peace. Let us be goodwill. Let us be love. And try and attach that to those around us. All right, take care, my friends.